We're going to get started with our next three inductees. So please keep finishing up your dinners and we'll move on in our evening. Our next inductee was a four-time All-American. He won 2 College Squash Association singles titles in 1997, 1998. Also led the Bantams to their first 2 CSA team crowns in 1999 and 2000. Please join me in honoring Marcus Cowie.
Well, Marcus was a 2-time World Junior runner-up. He was the #2 junior in the world. And also his mom coached him, and his mom was the English national coach for over 20 years. She was a legend. I knew on a personality level we had landed someone that was bigger than life. And from a squash standpoint, we knew he was very good, but we just didn't know what that meant. There had been international players that have come here over the years, but they came because they chose the school or whatever. But this was the first really recruiting war land at Trinity College. He would have been the Roger Federer of squash at his time. He was the man. But he wanted a college education because he saw the value of that. He was an insatiable appetite for the college experience. But when he would come to practice, those practices were unbelievably intense. For that period of time when he was in the house, everybody saw what greatness demands and what level of intensity you have to bring to the plate. His racket work was impeccable. It was magic. It was a wand in his hand. And he had this incredible competitiveness. He viewed the game as mano a mano. It was, I'm against you, and I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to crush you. Well, he was a 2-time national champion. He was the first national champion at Trinity College, at least in squash. And it was, like everything Marcus did, it was with panache and dramatic. We were playing the singles championships up at Dartmouth, and he was playing a fellow from Harvard who was his nemesis all through the juniors. And they were having a battle out there. And in the second game, Marcus took a dive and really badly bruised his hip. For a few points, he was dragging his leg behind him, but he just wasn't going to give in. And then he won the national championship. It was otherworldly.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Marcus Cowie.
Alrighty. Well, good evening, everyone. Firstly, it really is so good to be here. I feel incredibly honored. It's such a big occasion, and it's good to connect with some people over here that I've only ever known through WhatsApp. So, great. Thank you, Trinity College. Thank you, Trinity Squash, for this induction. It is a great honor, and I do feel very, very proud. To think that it's almost 30 years since I first touched down on Trinity soil, and almost 25 years since I've actually been here since the last time, is mind-boggling. Time goes so quickly. For those of you who don't know, when I arrived here in the fall of 1996, Trinity was going through a bit of a transformation period. It probably had a little bit of an ivory tower identity. And the institution needed to reach out into the neighborhood, to connect with the neighborhood, and to revitalize the neighborhood. And it did that in my period when I was here. And that was the brainchild of Evan Dobell, president from 96 to, I think, 2003 something. Evan and Kitty, by the way, honestly, it's so good that you could be here. Thank you so much. It really is an honor. So Evan embraced the urban landscape and used academic institutions to change the urban landscape. And it basically gave Trinity a new national identity for doing that. Forget about squash. This was just about improving the identity of Trinity College as a first choice school. And that was something that probably hadn't been there for some time. The transformation began in many ways in that time. And so me coming to Trinity Squash, which was just a tiny little piece in this puzzle, it felt more to me than just building the squash program. It felt that I was a part of this transformation and then this transitional period. And Evan saw squash, just like he does with everything. He saw it as a mechanism to boost the identity even more, because we were the only sport that were playing against the Ivies. And we had a chance to actually beat the Ivies, which is what we did. Those first few years, the first couple of years when I was here, I loved that. So I gave my experience and expertise in the game of squash on technique and strategy, training, building the team, building the program, and the women's program as well, was all kind of a part of my experience and my reason for being here. It wasn't just about winning, it was building something better. And the profile of Trinity Squash was gathering in the school, but it was also gathering wider than Trinity. The sport of squash was growing in the country, in your USA, and we were a part of that here at Trinity. And I was so fortunate. I mean, I'd been playing squash all over the world for squash audiences, right? The only people that were watching me were squash people. When I came here, people were watching me that didn't know anything about squash. My best mates in the dorm rooms, they hadn't even heard of the game. And they were there week in, week out, watching me do what I did best at the time. So for me, it was such an honor to showcase the sport that I loved to thousands of people. It was really, really a truly a great honor. And I'll never forget the time when there's almost, you can pinpoint the transformation that happened in the squash program was around about February 1998. And it became clear that around that time, squash was the event to be. It was the social must-be at event on the social calendar. Doesn't matter who you were, doesn't matter if you knew the sport, everyone was going to that game. So I take you back, please, to February the 4th, 1998. Somebody's 21st birthday. Trinity versus Harvard, 3rd floor Ferris Athletic Center, Saturday evening. This was the place to be that night. Even people who didn't want to be there were there. Over 2,000 people, I'm not joking, were at that Ferris Athletic Center with the smell of victory in the air. I was playing at the #1 spot, and I was two love up, and playing against, I think Coach mentioned it in the VT, against my rival at the time, Daniel Ezra from Harvard. I was killing him. 2 love up, feeding from the crowd, loving it. My parents even flew in for this one. Match ball up, serving, look at my racket, there's a broken string. Go and change your racket, right? So I go to the court to open the door to change my racket. I couldn't open the door. The fans' feet were blocking the door. And I looked out, and my racket bag was around the corner where the water fountain was. And I thought, it's gonna take 3-4 minutes, like minimum, to get my new racket. And I didn't want the momentum to go because I was feeling it. So I closed the door, I served, and he hit the error into the tin, and the place erupted. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but that match put us at 5 wins, which was the first time Trinity College beat Harvard University at squash. You all probably know Paul Asiante. He's kind of like a god around here now, right? And he's had to leave, unfortunately, but what he carried on in the sport, and I'm sure many of you know, what he did, they won for 13 years non-losing, which became known in national sports news as the streak. And it's still to this day, the men's squash Trinity team are the winningest sports team in college sports history. And for me, the fact that he's carried that on makes my part that I played even more like proud for myself. So it's so good to be here on campus. I've walked up and down and reminisced, showed videos to my daughters. It's so good to have seen Paul and Evan and Kitty. I am thrilled and truly honored to be here. Thank you, Trinity College. Thank you, Trinity Squash.